Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 8 of Major Power Foreign Policy. Today, our group will present about the contemporary China and Japan relations. My name is Anifa Nazira, and my other group members is Cikgu Nur Alia, Nur Afifah, Siti Nur Fatihah, Shakira binti Wahab, and Umaira Ifah. Next. For the introduction, the history on the contemporary China and Japan economic relations has developed at first after World War II as the two countries deal with the legacies of Japan's colonial occupation of China. The climate for economic ties vastly has improved first with Japan's diplomatic recognition of China in 1972. While the economic relationship improved over the years, it has still experienced periods of turmoil, but also has stabilized in the last few years as the two countries have become closely related in economic relations. The economic relationship between China and Japan is a critical part in the overall of their relationship. While political and national security relations have made relations volatile through the years, however, their economic ties have provided a great stability. China and Japan have grown more economically interdependent, which has provided a great incentive for both of the countries for them to pursue a better relations in economy. The economic relationship has broadened and deepened over the last 2 decades and has become more complex. Recently, the world has facing with a huge hurdles in deterioration of their economic activities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the adverse economic impact of the COVID-19 over the world economy, the economic cooperation between China and Japan has steadily showed an increase with their efforts to strengthen their trade and investment bilateral relationship, as well as to build a cooperation to boost their tourism sectors. Over the past few years, China and Japan economic interdependence has grown rapidly as trade and investment has surged to increase between the two countries. China and Japan economic ties has served as an anchor for the overall bilateral relationship and therefore have become the center of a robust East Asian trade and investment network. Hence, it has become one of the most dynamic and important bilateral relationships in the contemporary era of 21st century between the two big countries in Asia. Moving on to the next person.
For the Japan-China economic relations in terms of trade, Japan is China's third largest trading partner. Trade has increased from 1 billion to 317 billion of USD over the past 45 years. There are a lot of trades, and among them is, for the first one is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. It is 4 of the 5 largest economies in Asia, which is free trade agreement that also involve China and Japan, featuring any other Asia Pacific nations. Recently, RCEP will progressively lower the tariff and aim to counter the protectionism, increase investment, and allow more free movement of goods. So, with this lower tariff plan, Japan will eliminate on 86% of industrial goods exported to China, which is it will benefit to Japanese exporters such as auto part suppliers. The tariff elimination rate will significantly increase from the current 8% between Japan and China, which is the countries without a bilateral free trade agreement. And another one, Japan and China will work together to uphold and strengthen rules based on multilateral trade that involve three-way trade deal with South Korea, Japan, and China. For the second one, next slide, is technology. For the high technology, Japan's business interests support the export of high technology items and the transfer of technology to China. For example, high technology that has been transferred to China is speed railway, where China adopted the Japan high-speed railway system. With the adoption from Japan, it became useful since Chinese use it rapidly. And then any other technologies, which is recently China shifting the demand for advanced technologies to the other ASEAN nations such as Japan. it is one of the efforts for China to cut its reliance on US imports. China remains vulnerable to bottleneck in cutting-edge computer chips and key components embedded with American intellectual property, something made apparent by US sanction on Huawei technology. Next presenter.
Okay, for the second point, for the relation between Japan and China through investment. Next slide. Okay, the statistic from the Japan External Trade Organization (JETRO) show that Japan investment in China gradually declined from its peak of 30.5 billion in 2012 to 10.1 direct investment to China saw sluggish growth. Changes have been observed in future business development plans of Japan firm in China. Motivation of Japanese affiliated companies in China to expand business within the country has increased, a sign that Japanese business in China, which has been stagnant, might pick up again. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. Chinese investment in Japan rose also in recent years. Data from Japanese merger and acquisition M&A consulting firm Lycos show that the numbers of Chinese companies participating in investment or M&A deal of Japanese companies reached at least 59 in 2018, a 5 years record and a rise of 22% year-on-year. The Panasonic investment in China was just the beginning of the wave of Japanese investment in China. The total stock of Japanese foreign direct investment in China stood at some 124 billion at the end of 2018, with about 23,000 Japanese companies now having operation in China. Next presenter.
Okay, for the next point is regarding to the economic relations between China and Japan through tourism. Next slide. As we all know, Japan is a highly industrialized nation, and many of its citizens are wealthy. And therefore, outbound tourism, which refers to Japanese people, can afford to go to another country. Meanwhile, in China, there were so many attractive tourist places, and it welcomed a favorite destination for many Japanese citizens. Increasing economic relations have encouraged people-to-people exchange, especially with the rising number of businessmen from Japan to China. The number of Japanese tourists to China made important improvement from the 1980s to 1990s. In 2015, Japan welcomed almost 1 million international visitors, and from that 1 million, almost half of the international visitors are from China. This make next slide. This makes China the single largest and fastest growing sources of foreign tourists in Japan. In 2017, there was increasing number of Chinese people went to Japan, and they accounted for 38.4% of Japan's overall tourist expenditure, the highest of all countries and regions. China has been noted for producing the greatest economic effect on Japan's tourism industry. Although the number of visitors from China ranks second after South Korea, the total economic effect brought by Chinese tourists has been largest in recent years their travels in Japan. In 2018, some 8.4 million Chinese tourists visited Japan and spent a huge 13 billion, accounting for nearly 34% of all spending by international visitors. Next slide. And for the recent year, which is 2020, the world having the pandemic crisis that give a huge impact, mostly to the countries around the world. This also impacted the Japan-China tourism as foreign visitors to Japan decreased with sharper falls as the impact from the coronavirus. The Japan National Tourism Organization data showed that international arrivals, including tourism and business travelers, declined 1.1% in the month to 2.66 million from 2.69 million in the same month last year. As we can see, Chinese tourists has contributed a huge impact on Japan's economic. And regarding to this statement, the coronavirus epidemic has raised question about Japan's over-reliance on tourism, which until now was one of the few achievements of the Abenomics growth policies of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, introduced 7 years ago. Next presenter.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the current relations between China and Japan during the pandemic of COVID-19 that we are facing right now. So next slide. So during the early pandemic COVID-19, Japan is one of the country that has donated a large number of masks, goggles and PPE to China. And then China Foreign Minister spokesman, Mrs. Hua Chunying, thanks Japan for helping them in those difficult times by stating that since the outbreak of the pandemic, the Japanese government and its people from all walks of life have expressed sympathy, understanding and support to us. And we will keep this in our heart. So later, when the situation in China is getting better, China returned the favor in helping Japan by sending 5,000 PPE and 100,000 medical masks to Japan. One of the associate dean of the Renmin University of China School of International Studies in Beijing, Jin Kanrong, stated that it is an important tradition of China's diplomacy to remember and return the favor to others, no matter how big or small the favor that others provided, especially when China was having a hard time. China will always remember and often will return more. So other than PPE, masks, Japan also facing the shortage of test kits and then China has also donated a batch of novel coronavirus test kits to Japan. Other than China, one province in China, which is Liaoning, also sent help to Japan in donating 79,800 surgical masks and 2,030 PPE. So overall, China is ready to assist Japan at its best in overcoming the pandemic COVID-19. So next slide. During pandemic between China and Japan, the pandemic has affected the relations, especially in trade matters. So due to China lockdown, Japanese imports falls almost half from the previous year. And then this interferes with the flow of the part to Japanese factories and goods to Japanese shopping malls, which will badly affected Japanese exports, GDP and consumer well-being. Other than the trade matters, the much anticipated Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Japan, which was scheduled last year on April, has been postponed, and they expressed their disappointment because the Chinese leaders to Japan have happened only once in 10 years in recent years. And then when US and China are having conflict, Japan also affected because Japan can be sit in between those two. And then even though Japan are not directly involved, Japan are still affected and stuck in between those two, resulting in relations with China affected. However, they will try to overcome that challenges and improve their relations in future once the pandemic is over. Moving on to the next presenter.
So for the conclusion, the economic interactions on the whole of China and Japan's relations have proven effective in promoting stable political relations. So China and Japan economies are respectively the world's second and third largest economy by GDP, and also the world first and fourth largest economies by GDP PPP. So besides economic relations have provided the foundation for any political relationship, they have served to maintain that relationship, and sometimes on an informal basis like during times of trouble, and they have paved the way to formal diplomatic relations, especially during current pandemic COVID-19. So despite the conflicts, China and Japan have been steadily improving their relationship, with both sides remarking that they will be focusing on developing healthy ties. So next slide. Okay. Both countries have started to cooperate in numerous areas, including boosting global trade and Asia economic activities, working hand in hand on One Belt, One Road initiative, and setting up maritime and air holding several high-level meetings and consultations on ground on the trade war with the Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, saying that the Japan and China relations have been moving in the direction of great improvement. So we can see that Japan's relationship with China is one involving multiple strategies of cooperative engagement and competitive balancing, designed to manage both the perceived risks and potential benefits of a rise in China now. So these strategies are a result of a complex history and an uncertain future between these two states. So the major pressure facing the China and Japan, which also known Sino-Japanese relationship, are heavily influenced by significant domestic legitimacy anxieties in both countries. And also there are strong mutual interests that work to preserve bilateral stability. So thank you. That's all from our group.